Hello, welcome to another video, and today we're going to be looking at how to develop strength into the pecs or the chest region. So firstly, like all these previous videos on building muscle to a particular area, we've got to look at the things that affect or that will prevent you from doing so, or even create problems if you try to. And the first thing we look at here is thoracic mobility, in this case thoracic extension. So again, I must say that there's many ways that you can do this. I'm only just giving you one example, but really there could be several that you may need to try, and they can vary from person to person. So check the description under the video, because I'll give you links to articles that will give you like 10 examples of thoracic mobility instead of me giving you one. So this first one's very important because it guarantees that you'll have the optimal rib cage position for you to be able to execute correct pushing patterns and movements, and also scapular function and stuff like that as well. So firstly, foam roller, that's a very simple way to do it. So that's more thoracic mobility for extension, and this is thoracic mobility for rotation. Very easy for people to become very rigid through this region from sitting too much or just general inactivity. And then if they go and apply heaps of stiffening exercises such as squats, deadlifts, and even bench presses for the chest region, they can really lock this rib cage up. So this is Mel showing really good demonstration of thoracic rotation. So you can see how she gets full range of motion on this. So the full range of motion be right there. So that's basically like 180 degrees that she's able to move through. So often I'll see people with problems around the shoulder and the thoracic region, maybe sort of sitting somewhere about here with their elbow, really limited, and that's going to cause heaps of trouble at the front of the shoulder there, and all they need to aggravate that is just to start doing some chest exercises or even push-ups. Alright, so really important to start off with these things just to make sure that you, before you start trying to annihilate the muscle groups with heaps of work, that they're going to be in a good position to execute it. So next thing I'm going to look at is just the basic flexibility of the internal rotators, being also the lats as well as the pecs. So this is the basic stretch, and you obviously are looking for what she has there, where both fingers are going to reach and touch. You can see a little bit tighter on a non-dominant hand, being a left hand, but really generally that's pretty good. You know, if you've got like a big asymmetry, so if the one hand's way down here on this side but the other two are touching, then it's indicating you really have some stiffness at the front of the shoulder there, and that once again is going to be aggravated the minute you start trying some of the exercises we're going to show you. Alright, so that's a great sort of way to observe and assess the flexibility of that area. This stretch would be the better way to actually improve it. So if there is a problem, this would be how you would stretch it. Now, really important that you don't stretch this before you do your strength exercise. Do this after. The two thoracic drills we did at the beginning, they would work well before your workout, but not and after as well. But the stretching ones like this are best done at the end of the workout, not between sets either, because it will weaken you too much before you're about to apply your strength movement. Alright, so that's our basic mobility stuff out of the way. Again, there's a lot of other things I may look at, but that's just to give you an idea of things that might do. So now we look at the push-ups. Obviously this is a really very popular exercise, a very good exercise if it's done well. A great way to assess function of the scapula and rib cage. Again, serratus anterior, a big factor here, and you really have a lot more control through this than you do with the dumbbell and barbells and so forth. So you can see as she's executing more of these, probably starts to fatigue, and we start to see a little bit of issues creeping up. But if I just go back to the beginning here, right at this point where we look at her shoulder blade function. So as she's pushing, so she's got great control here. Even with her top, with not being able to see the scap, you can see that's quite flat across there. So as she's executing the protraction of the push-up, so that she's going down and then execute that part there where they're really pushing through, so the scapula really coming around and getting that full upward rotation that they need. All right, so this is a great way. Obviously, to build strength, a lot of people might find this easy, so they might be able to knock out a lot of reps, and that's fine. Like, that's a great way to start off and build some strength. Obviously, down the track you want to sort of add other things, but to begin with, you really should be executing good form with the push-up before you start doing the other things. Often I see people go straight to bench presses and dumbbells, yet their push-up technique is extremely ordinary, and they're just going to suffer with problems later on. So once I've done that one, and this is probably arguably the best of the functional movements as such, because once we're standing, this is why you won't see me show you bench press in this video, because I might show you the dumbbell chest press because we can still get some legs involved, but it's this leg stance here that we're really bringing in this anterior sling. Very functional movement, because this applies to things like running, throwing balls, boxing and stuff like that, but really it works its efficiency in how we move, and the arm strength is dependent upon the leg and trunk stability. If you don't have either of those, it compromises your upper body strength. So this is where you're really becoming overall strong, not just strong in one particular region and at the expense of another. All right, so this is a fantastic, also great way to develop strength in serratus anterior, which is often the weak and inhibited muscle in these pushing movements. All right, so this is a great exercise. I bring this in very early. I actually use this as a test on the first day with people, because it helps me to identify how well they're moving in this pushing pattern. All right, so once we've got the push-up and the single cable press down, then I might look at the dual cable press, which is actually an easier movement. There's less things going wrong. It's much simpler with coordination because both arms are doing the same thing. You're not as unstable as the last one, so it's a simpler exercise. Obviously loads the chest a hell of a lot more. This is when you're now starting to build some serious muscle, but appreciate how I didn't go straight into doing this. I worked through stability and good movement patterns before I started to apply hypertrophy and muscular size methods. Right, so I'm wanting to execute good movement skills before I just try to annihilate with strength training. All right, so this is a simple drill. Most people have seen this before. Nothing really new to get from that. Then after I've gone from a cable one, I'm going to move into the supine position with the dumbbells, and this is where you probably see your bench press type things come into it. I prefer to use a Swiss ball for this than a bench, just because it brings the legs and the core into play again, especially the glutes are really going to get involved. Dumbbells are obviously much harder to handle than a barbell, and even the cables to some degree, just because they're so unstable. And also it's an advantage because the shoulder might have on one side some unique difficulty of something that's not quite there, and you might be able to just position the shoulder in a way with a dumbbell that can make it move well. Barbell being a fixed point, you won't have that luxury, and you'll be forced into doing something that the shoulder may not like. All right, so that's your basic chest press one. So if I just take that back just to discuss a couple of things on that. So making sure that, like, you obviously many people are familiar with the arm movement, but on this leg position and core position, you want to make sure that you try to stay quite level all the way through. So you're trying to sort of stay in this straight line. You don't want to be sagging down too much. You don't want to overextend. This is where Mel sometimes overextends. So she's dropping her butt a little bit more so she doesn't arch her back excessively. All right, but this is a great way. This is a good way to see if there is a glute weakness. Now, once I've done the two arm, a bit like in the opposite with the cables, the two arms I'll start with, but then I might go to the single arm to really bring the core into it in a much greater way. And you'll see how the ball, when she's doing this one, the ball sort of moves. All right, ideally you don't want that to happen. You want this leg to stay really planted, and this is where, funnily enough, this arm exercise now turns into more of a glute exercise and an abdominal exercise. So it becomes, even though the weight in the arm is the same, just this unbalanced movement just creates this huge torque feeling throughout that leg and core. You see how she's stronger on this right side. The ball doesn't move anywhere near as much as she did with her left side. A little bit of movement there, but generally this is a little bit stronger, which you would expect with her dominant hand. So coordination's a lot greater here, so we get a lot more neural gains out of this as much as the muscular gains. Alright, so this is a great choice. I would probably spend more time with this one-arm one than the two-arm one with many people for the reasons that we just spoke about. Now this next one is sort of a follow-on from that same thing, and this is where we look at the pec fly. Now I'm not really a massive fan of these in general, but when I do it this way, again, it's surprisingly really tough. Very, very lightweight. You don't need a heavy load for this. And just the fact that the cable is actually pulling you, it's a bit different to the dumbbell dropping you, trying to go straight down. This has actually got a sideways pull to it. So it's very much so. You can see how instead of it's a pressing movement, this has got this fly movement, so the elbow's slightly bent. Because the cable's actually pulling away from her, basically almost pulling her off the ball, so there's this huge abdominal contraction trying to prevent you getting pulled off, and the glutes are pushing up at the same time. So, and trust me, your pecs will feel this in a big way because they're being really ripped apart. You don't have the strength of the deltoids and the triceps helping you to push the movement because there's no pushing pattern involved in this now. Hence, this is why you need it to be very light. All right, usually works well with higher reps, where the pressing ones you can do with shorter reps and develop a bit more maximal strength. This one you can never do it with it because it's just too complicated. A very deceptively hard exercise. A great way if you wanted to superset these pushing and fly movements together to create that huge time under tension overload. All right, and at the same time building strength to the core and the legs. Right, so once we've sort of got these hypertrophy feeling type of exercises, then we want to try and move into the more dynamic stuff. So where we're going to, like we've seen before on all the previous videos of this, towards the end we start to move a lot faster and in the way that we are really designed to move. So this is where we come back to our cable press, but this time we add the weight shift to it. So we really load up the leg and drive off it and with a lot more faster tempo. So it's arguably becomes a bit more of a leg exercise than an arm exercise. Very aerobic, very difficult to breathe because it requires so much abdominal stabilization to not get pulled in. A lot of coordination and timing on this. All right, so that's the cable push with weight shift, a great exercise to really finish off working functionally. And then I could bring in there's heaps of these different barbell ones. So again, I'm just giving you one version, but there's many others I could use here. And then this is where we're going from being that split stance lunge position to more of a squat stance. And we're driving into this push, squat, push. Starts to become a little bit of a shoulder press in some ways as well, but trust me, the pecs are definitely on the go on this as well. All right, so there's several ways that you can really build the strength into your chest region, pec muscles, and really incorporating functional concepts and really with in the back of your mind saying, I want to be strong, but I want to be functionally strong. I don't want to just be strong for lying on my back pushing a barbell, which means I might be terribly, pathetically weak and my legs have zero coordination, which is no good to me in the real world. I'm really trying to have the best of being strong for a bench press, but having everything else with it at the same time. And that's the purpose of these videos, of sort of trying to show you some better ways to train and showing you also that you can get big. If you want to get bigger, you just have to apply the time under tension and things like that, and making sure the sets last longer, and that's how you'll build your muscular size. But you don't need to do isolation training to achieve that. All right, so I hope you've enjoyed this video, and we'll see you on the next one.